Coming off of a really nice run from my last tournament, getting top 16, there's no better time than the present than to hop into another tournament. And that's exactly what I did with signing up with this week's Little Legends League for Wednesday, which is a Pokemon Pocket tournament already filled with 64 people, however, with a huge limitation. This week's format means no EX Pokemon. I'm talking no Mewtwo's, no Pikachu's, no Moltres, nothing. So with that, I thought today would be a great day to share with you my top 5 EX-less Pokemon decks. And well, you can see the screen right here. We have Wheezing and Dragonite. Honestly, I feel like I'm going to see a lot of Wheezing and a lot of Dragonite in this tournament. But if you're not aware, this is kind of how it works. You play your Dratini in the back line so that way you can slowly build it up with your water and electric type energy. You play this type of deck and you remove the dark energy when you're at the deck creation menu. In case you didn't know that, you can actually choose what type of energy you want it to run. You could run this deck with nothing but fire type energy as long as you select it. Not sure why you would want to do that, but it is an option. So while your Dratini's in the back slowly getting built up, you have your Coughing in the front, then hopefully by turn 2, evolving into a Wheezing and then just poisoning your opponent's active Pokemon, chipping 10 damage for every turn's checkup phase. Kind of just ignoring them dealing any damage to you. All the while you're leveling up, you're trying to get your Dratini into a Dragonair, into a Dragonite, and then when the time has come, you can either just let your Wheezing go, or you can ignore its 3 energy retreat cost and use Koga to just bounce it right back to your hand, play the Coughing, wait till the following turn to then evolve it again, and now you can just bring your Dragonite to the front row and center the active spot and just hit your opponent's Pokemon with Draco Meteor. I mean, I'm talking all of your opponent's Pokemon, 200 damage distributed by 50-50-50-50. You don't know who's getting hit. I mean, there could be a Caterpie in the back row that gets the full 200. It could be even. It could be one person gets, one Pokemon gets 150, the other one gets 50. You don't really know, but still, it is a massive amount of damage. And with a high HP stat being 160, it's one of the EX less Pokemon that's kind of threatening with a massive attack and damage power and massive HP, which is why I think running it with something like Wheezing, kind of stalling your opponents out while you build up your Dragonite, is going to be pretty scary, to be honest. The rest of this deck is 2 potions, 2 X speeds, just in case they, Sabrina your Dratini to the front. Well, you can just X speed right back to your Coughing. That's literally what X speed's for. We're not running any Sabrinas because we don't really care who's in the active spot, because Draco Meteor literally hits whoever they want to hit. So Sabrina, you don't really need to run Sabrina in this deck. And then we have 2 Pokeballs and 2 Professor Researchers, as well as our 2 Kogas. But yeah, that's going to be the first deck that I'm sharing with you guys, and the rest only get spicier. Moving on, let's go into this one, which honestly, I'm either going to see Arbok and Wheezing, or we're going to see this lockdown variant of Arbok. Again, it's a deck that doesn't run Sabrina because you have Pidgey, Pidgeotto, and Pidgeot. Once you evolve fully into your Pidgeot, you have the ability to drive off, which pretty much acts like a Sabrina, where you move the active Pokemon and your opponent has to bring something back forward. So the way this works is you have your Pidgeot on your bench. I mean, I guess you could attack with it, but you really want it on your bench to force your opponent to switch out certain specific Pokemon. And then you have your Arbok front row and center, hitting them with corner, trapping them, not allowing them to leave. So if they try to X speed out and they're trying to preserve one of their Pokemon, honestly, this type of deck goes into EX decks really well. And then it just continuously does your 60 damage. This is gonna pretty much knock out almost any Pokemon. It knocks out Dragonite in 3 turns. It knocks out almost any other stage 1, stage 2 Pokemon in about like 2 turns, maybe 3. 2 turns with the use of Giovanni, turning its maximum damage up to 140 across 2 turns, which is why that's there. And then we have 2 potions, we have 2 X speeds, 2 Pokeballs, and 2 Professor Researchers. Honestly, this is going to be pretty tough to go into. I have a couple of matchups that I think could counter this, but they don't necessarily do that great into the other 3 decks that I'm about to show you. But I still think this is going to be one of the hottest decks in this upcoming tournament. I'm making my guesses here, guys, and I'm sharing with you what I think is going to be the best. Moving on, let's check out the next one. And yeah, it is a variation of Mewtwo. Now, a lot of you are like, no one's going to play this. I still think you can, right? 120 HP and attack with a Mewtwo is pretty nasty. It loses its first move, which does, I forget what it is. It's not side drive. It does the 50 damage, right? And because it loses that, we're actually dropping Giovanni. There's no point. But pretty much you can just play your Mewtwo, start giving it energy, build your Ralts all the way up to a Gardevoir, and then when the time comes, switch it in to then, you know, start dealing insane damage, 120 every single turn. I think it's pretty good. And then of course we have the two Snorlax here, help us stall out, because the goal is to essentially, you know, you can let your first Snorlax go, you can let your second Snorlax go, and then after that Mewtwo's just coming up and just 120 120 120 every single turn. I think this is going to be pretty strong in a format with no EX Pokemon. I guess you could run something like Kangaskhan, but I think Snorlax is just a bit better being at 150 HP. Then we have two potions, two X speeds. The X speeds are going to be for your Mewtwo's or your, you know, Ralts, Gardevoir, Kirlia to switch back into your Snorlax. You're never using X speed on your Snorlax. And I just want your Snorlax to, you know, go down, to be honest. We have two Pokeballs, one red card, because whenever you're working in a ramp type deck, I think red card actually works to your benefit to stall and slow down your opponent's strategy, especially if they're building up their hand. Turn one, they're playing Pokeballs and Professor Researchers. They lose all that momentum, you red card them, and now they're stuck just drawing a single card every single turn. And then we have one Sabrina just to help us out with that Mewtwo. Again, if you lose a Snorlax and your opponent hasn't used any Sabrinas, you might not want to play another Snorlax because they could get you in that aspect where they knock out one of your Ralts or Kirlias, right? So now you're down 2 points, and then they can just Sabrina into your Snorlax and chip away damage over time, and it's very hard to retreat that Pokemon. So that's something you would want to really pay attention to this type of deck. But I think personally, I don't know, maybe I'm crazy, maybe I'm just spinning this out there, but I think Mewtwo EX had close to 30% usage in the last massive tournament. I can't imagine this variant of Mewtwo doesn't also get some sort of, you know, action in play. But now we still have two more decks, and these next one are super aggro. I already know 100% we're gonna see this in at least like more than 5, close to 10 decks in this tournament, right? And that's going to be the Lieutenant Surge variant for the electric aggro deck. You have your two Pikachus, you have your Raichu, you have your Magnemite Magneton, which makes this deck so good. We only have one copy of Voltorb and Electrode, and that's pretty much there to combat your opponent's Sabrinas. If they ever use Sabrina, you just bring in your Electrode, and then the following turn you kind of just swap out. Then we have one Potion, we have one X Speed, we have two Pokeballs, two Professor Researchers, two Sabrinas, and then the Lieutenant Surge right here, because with your Magneton, you can Lieutenant Surge onto your Raichu back to back, right? It's pretty crazy, and just do 140 damage to your opponent's Pokemon. Almost nothing is surviving that. I mean, I guess like, you know, Snorlax, a couple Pokemon do, but that is a lot of power early on, and it's pretty scary, and all these Pokemon are only stage 1. So it's very easy to get these Pokemon online, which makes this type of deck extremely threatening. But speaking of threatening, I think the next deck is going to be the most... I can't imagine not seeing at least one representation of this type of deck in top 4, if not all of them being this representation. This deck, this Blaine Hyper Aggro Fire type deck is gonna go crazy. You have your two Vulpix, your two Ninetales, your two Ponyta, your two Rapidash. I've seen variations with Farfetch'd, I've seen variations with Magmar, but for the sake of just, you know, being consistent and showing you what this deck actually does, we didn't put that in here. We have two Potions, two X Speeds, two Pokeballs, two Professor Research, two Sabrinas, because you could just swap in and just do damage that way, because your Ninetales for 2 energy does 90 damage, which is insane, you guys. You could just swap in one of their basic Pokemon, they're gone. Nothing's surviving that. I mean, a Kangaskhan is a basic, and that's close to 100. So if you throw something like Blaine on top of that, your Ninetales is now doing 120. I can't imagine any grass type decks doing well into this format. Now, I could be wrong, because if you watched my last recap of the last top 16 decks, the #1 winning deck in the 128 player tournament was a Venusaur and Executor, right? But still, I can't imagine Blaine being this hyper aggro, not just dominating, especially in a format that has no EX Pokemon. But there you guys have it. That is my top 5 EX list decks that I think I might see in this Wednesday's tournament. But what do you guys think? What do you think of this format? If you're interested in partaking in a future tournament, I'll drop their Discord link in the description, and I'll probably do it in the pinned comments down below. So be sure to check that out. It's already capped this Wednesday's tournament. I'm going to be competing in that, so wish me luck. My deck that I'm bringing is not in the top 5, so we'll see how that does. I'm keeping it under wraps. It's a little spicy, but we'll see. I'm actually thinking about representing 2 types of decks, so we'll see which one makes the cut for Wednesday. But there you guys have it. Let me know what you think. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Later.